Hey friends, it's Rachel. Welcome back to my channel, and welcome to another monthly reading wrap-up where I share with you the books I read this month. In October, I read only 4 books, and I really did think that there was going to be another book that I could add in on the end, but unfortunately it took me longer to read it than I anticipated, and I didn't get it done in time, so that will just have to go in next month's reading wrap-up. However, the books that I did read this month overall were okay, so let's get into those now. The first book on this list is The Nurse's Secret by Amanda Skenandore, and this is a historical fiction novel that takes place in the late 1800s, and is kind of sort of a mystery, but ultimately not really. We'll get into that more later. The main character in this book, named Una Kelly, is an Irish immigrant. I believe that she's an immigrant. Her family's from Ireland anyway, and she is now in New York City, and she works as a thief. She's a pickpocket. She steals things and then brings them back to Marm Bly, who is the lady that she works for, who takes a large cut of all of the things that she sells that Una steals, and Una gets only a small amount of money in return. This leads her to being a little bit resentful of the relationship that they have, but she is Marm Bly's best thief, and they both know it. However, one day Una becomes a little too reckless, and she makes a mistake, and it leads to a murder that Una is wrongly accused of, and in order to lay low and escape the police, she applies at the Bellevue nursing school and is accepted. And so at first it just becomes a hideout, a way for her to escape unwanted police attention until the hubbub dies down surrounding this murder, and then she plans she can just leave whenever she wants. However, as time goes on, Una finds that she genuinely has a sort of passion for nursing, and she starts to uncover things that may point to the answers that surround the murder that she was falsely accused of. The reason that I say this book isn't really a mystery is because there's not a lot of suspects that are provided, and if you do read lots of mysteries, you'll pretty much know straight off the bat who the killer is. Despite that, I did find this book to be generally enjoyable. Una did annoy me sometimes in that she doesn't seem to listen, she doesn't seem to learn. Obviously, at the beginning, she's just here at this nursing school as a way to lay low, and she doesn't ultimately want to be a nurse, but she's been warned multiple times that this is a very serious thing. Patients can die if you make mistakes and you don't pay attention, and so only the best people who are serious about nursing are going to be accepted at the school and then allowed to continue at the school. And despite being warned multiple times, despite it being made abundantly clear to Una that this is serious work and that she needs to take it seriously or she will be out on the street, Una doesn't seem to get that through her thick head sometimes. And considering the stakes that she has, I would think that she would try a little bit harder to take that advice to heart. It's not like she's here like some of the other characters who genuinely want to be nurses and are devastated when things aren't going well or they do something wrong or heaven forbid they're asked to leave. Una has the added pressure that she needs to hide from the police, and if she's expelled from the school and let go, she'll be back on the streets. Where's she going to go? Marm Bly has severed all connection with her because of the murder and what Una did, and so she can't go back to her. If she goes back out onto the street with nowhere to go, the police are bound to find her because obviously they're looking for her in connection with a murder, which is a pretty big deal. So it's imperative that Una manage not to get kicked out of said school, and I would think that would mean, for the time being, buckling down, listening to instruction, and doing everything possible to not get expelled. Obviously, Una bristles when she's given orders. She doesn't like being told what to do. She has a general problem with authority, all of which is understandable given her personality and her upbringing. I get that. But given the stakes, you'd think that she would learn a little bit quicker to shape up. But other than that, I found the book to be pretty enjoyable. I cared about the characters, I cared about the stakes, I wanted the characters to succeed, and the tidbits and the research that were done in this book for the historical medical practices were also very interesting to read about. Amanda Skenandore is apparently a nurse herself, and she's done an immense amount of research into this topic, I am sure, and it shows. I also enjoyed her other book, which I read, which was The Second Life of Muriel West, and of the two, I think Muriel West was a deeper story and better written, but it was also far more depressing than The Nurse's Secret. So if you're interested in historical fiction or historical nursing, I would recommend this book. Next on the list we have Ruination by Anthony Reynolds, and I actually have a video dedicated solely to this book if you'd like to check it out, but it is a League of Legends novel, which means that it's based on the video game League of Legends, which is insanely popular. I personally don't play League of Legends, but I do know a little bit about the lore, and so I decided to give this book a try because it involves Callista, whose story that I find particularly interesting. In this book, Callista is the niece to King Viego, who recently ascended the throne. As he was dying, Viego's father implored Callista to look after his son as he takes the throne, to watch out for him, to keep an eye on him, and if necessary to control him, because Viego has certain personality characteristics that are a little bit worrying in a leader, but Callista seems to be keeping Viego on the straight and narrow, along with Viego's new wife, Isolde. The kingdom Camivore, where Viego is king of, has a warlike reputation, and together the two women want to change that. They want Camivore to be more peaceful because they have a reputation of invading nearby countries and stealing their magic relics. And so Callista wants to change that, and she has found an ally in Isolde. So together the two women are kind of a civilizing effect on Viego, and for a time everything seems to be going great. But after one such invasion campaign, an assassin's poison blade strikes Isolde, and the queen is slowly dying, and none of the healers can save her. In desperation, Viego turns to the myth of the Blessed Isles, which are these islands that nobody knows where they are, nobody knows if they really exist, but it is said that it contains the Well of the Ages, which are waters that can heal any injury. And if this is true, if they can be found, maybe Isolde can be saved. So in order to placate him, Callista agrees to go on a journey to the Blessed Isles. And that is the premise of this story. Of course, if you know anything about the League of Legends lore, you know that the Blessed Isles eventually became the Shadow Isles, and you know what happens to Callista. That's a spoiler in case anybody wants to read this book. I'm not going to talk about that here. But overall, I did think that the book did a good job of staying true to what game lore we are given. I do think at a certain point, about a fourth of the way through, it did really start to feel like a book that was based on a video game, which makes sense because it is a book based on a video game. But I don't necessarily think that it needs to be. Just because your source material is a video game, I don't think that necessarily equates to a bad book, although personally I don't read a lot of books based on video games. I've only read one other, I believe, and it was worse than this. So this was the best book based on a video game that I have thus far read. It was just okay. There was a lot of video gamey aspects to it, which obviously you would expect, and stuff that didn't necessarily make a great deal of sense, but overall it was just okay, and I do think that people who are fans of League of Legends would probably find this book to be an okay read. And then we have The Whispering Skull by Jonathan Stroud, which if you guys know anything about me or my channel, you will know that Lockwood & Co., which this book is a part of, is my favorite series of all time, and I have a video dedicated solely to that if you'd like to know more about it. But The Whispering Skull is the second book in the Lockwood & Co. series. This series follows a group of young ghost hunters, and it's set in London, in which the city has been plagued by a ghost epidemic known as the Problem. For 50 years, ghosts have beset the city and England in general, and they just come back and nobody really knows why, and this is obviously a problem because ghosts are dangerous. If they touch you, you will die of ghost touch, so they need to be eradicated. Haunted places need to be made safe, and the only people who can see these ghosts are children and teenagers, and so they are hired by agencies to work for them to solve these haunting problems. In every single agency throughout England, the adults are in charge and the young people are the employees, with the exception of one agency, and that is Lockwood & Co., which is run by Anthony Lockwood, George Cubbins, and its newest member, Lucy Carlisle, who joins them in the first book, The Screaming Staircase. So in the second book, The Whispering Skull, we've obviously moved on a little bit more, and I don't really want to talk about that because of spoilers, and I just want everybody to read the series because I think it's great, and I think people will like it if they haven't discovered it already, and obviously you should start with the first book, which is The Screaming Staircase. So I'm not going to talk about the specific events of The Whispering Skull here because that's a spoiler. Just go read The Screaming Staircase. And that also means that I can't say a great deal about the fourth book on this list because that is The Hollow Boy, which is the third book in the Lockwood & Co. series, which I was trying to reread for spooky season until I got a little bit derailed by the book that I didn't finish in time to put into this video. But now that that book is done, I'm going to probably read the last two books in the Lockwood & Co. series. So obviously I can't talk about the specific events that happen in these books because of potential spoilers. I just want everybody to read this series who has not already. Give it a chance. Even if you think that paranormal ghost stuff is not your cup of tea, this book is just original, it's witty, it's very in-depth and atmospheric in its world building. The characterization is phenomenal. The people in this book all feel like real fleshed out people. The dialogue is very witty and realistic, and one thing I like in particular is that even though the characters are young people, they don't feel like immature characters you sometimes find in YA. Like, it's very clear sometimes that they are in fact not adults because of the bickering that goes on, but it's bickering that makes sense, it's bickering that's realistic, it's bickering that's amusing and fun to read, which most of the time in YA bickering is not that way, at least in my opinion. The banter is not good, but in this case, it is. This book is just phenomenal in every single way, and I encourage everybody to read it, and if you'd like to hear me just gush over this series even more, I direct you over to that video of mine. But that's really all I have for this video. Those are the only books that I read this month before I got wrapped up with none other than The Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson. Since this video is going to air before the video I am going to do on this book, I just have to say keep an eye out on that. This book is over 1,000 pages long, and it was quite a trip. I'm not going to say anything more about that here because this book was so long it didn't make the cut for this video, but I have a video planned for it. It just took me longer to read than anticipated. Obviously, it's 1,000 pages long, so keep an eye out for that if that's something you're interested in. This book will also have to go in next month's wrap-up. But those are all the books that I have to talk about this time. I feel like there really wasn't much I could say about some of them, so this wrap-up video is going to be shorter than normal. Short and sweet, but maybe that's how we like it. Anyway, if you enjoyed this video, feel free to leave a like, comment, and subscribe so you don't miss out on any future content. I appreciate each and every one of you, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!